Right, Statistics South Africa has, of course, released the latest labour market movements, and some significant changes there being reported if really you do consider the 0.2 percentage drop a significant change. However, it does bring the unemployment rate to 32.7%. However, what is still remaining is a challenging youth unemployment rate that is very high. To get better understanding on these numbers, we are now joined in this conversation by Matthew Parks, Congress of South African Trade Unions Parliamentary Coordinator, as well as Ayanda, Kota, leader of the Unemployed People's Movement. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for coming on tonight here on In Focus. Discouraged job seekers have decreased by 151,000 in the fourth quarter of 2022 compared to the previous quarter, resulting in the net decrease of 57,000 in the not economically active population. It's a drop in the ocean, Matthew, when we look at the amount of unemployed people that are there in the country. Help us gain an understanding of what's happening as far as those numbers are concerned.
No, look, it is a drop in the ocean. But nonetheless, I think we want to welcome any progress we see as a country in reducing unemployment, creating jobs and so forth, because unemployment is our greatest single national crisis. If people can't have a job, they can't earn a salary to take care of themselves, to feed the families, to buy electricity, to take the children to school, etc. And of course, we must be deeply concerned as a society when we have an unemployment rate of 42.6%. But I think we must welcome that over the past 4 quarters, over the duration of 2022, we've seen the economy emerge from a recession. We'll recall that we lost 2.2 million jobs during the period of COVID-19. Unemployment rose to an all-time high of 46%. But over the course of the past year, we've seen unemployment drop by 4%. So that's not enough. But nonetheless, I think we want to welcome the progress. But I think more critically for us is that can we maintain that momentum? Because we're very fearful that right now, we might end up losing that momentum, might end up treading backwards. The most recent job stats, which is for the last quarter, basically the festive season, at the end of the year, there always is a bit of an uptake in jobs because people go home, they're on holiday, they buy presents for their kids, they buy Christmas clothes, they pay for school uniforms, etc. They're at home, they're spending money, so there's an uptake in jobs. I think our fears that we've seen over the past 2 months, really unprecedented levels of load shedding. That's going to hit the economy quite hard. But having said that, we have seen the economy has been quite resilient in the face of many, many obstacles, from COVID-19 to a lockdown, to a recession, to corruption, state capture, to the violence in July 2021, the floods last year, etc., load shedding. But having said that, we think this moment should again be a call for government to do everything it possibly can and much faster to address the obstacles to growing the economy. So let's fix the issues of Eskom and load shedding. Let's make sure that transit is working, that all our manufacturing and mining agricultural goods can reach the destinations on time. Let's make sure we fix metro rail, etc., because those are the critical things to growing the economy, to reducing unemployment.
Ayanda, what are you observing about these key changes within the labour market? One would look at, for example, during the time of COVID-19, right? We were able to develop particular policy because, of course, of the state of disaster to address the challenge that we were faced with. We were also able to delegate particular regulations to fast-track certain things that we wanted done. Well, you can argue some people took advantage of that. There was stealing and so on and so forth. But there was a sense that we are able to develop the policy that address our challenges and delegate regulations to address those challenges. When we look at the employment outcomes so far, what are you observing? Are we putting that kind of practice in place where we are developing policy and delegating regulations to address this big challenge?
Well, good evening to you, Tabo, and good evening to Newzroom Afrika viewers. I think on our part, there is nothing to celebrate. It's a drop in an ocean of unemployment, an ocean of poverty. We cannot celebrate when over 13 people are locked outside the economy, are pushed into the peripheries of society. Unemployment means hunger. Unemployment means no dignity. Unemployment ithatha isithunzi nesidima sakho soba ungumuntu, because you cannot meet your own personal needs, let alone meeting other needs. You cannot meet your own basic needs as a person. That's number one. Number two, coming to poverty, responding to your question. There are two things that were quite dominant during the during the COVID-19. One was that this country shed more jobs. About 3 million jobs were lost during the COVID-19. Number two, the point that I keep on making is that our country was exposed of its failures. Hospitals were not able to deal or did not have the capacity to deal with the challenges of COVID-19. We did not have doctors. We did not have beds in these hospitals. The buildings themselves were not sufficient. And two, we have seen during that period a lot of thieving. Money that was put aside for PPEs. How the politicians were so heartless in doing so, switching off the life-supporting machines of people that were suffering from COVID-19, lying in the beds in hospitals, and politicians thieving the money. So those are some of the issues that we have seen during the 19 state. That what was exposed was the state that its capacity was completely eroded. Its capacity was completely eroded. That it was not able to meet some of the challenges. As a result, people were losing lives. The last point that I want to make on this issue of unemployment is that we do not have the conducive conditions in this country to create the job, to create or to grow economy that can translate into jobs. And one key reason, which is a challenge in this country, is the austerity budget. Just look at the budget of the minister. The unemployed were not there, completely not there. It was disheartening to realize even the 350 that they are talking about. If you look at that 350, 350, that's your nominal value. If you look at it in terms of the real value, people, you look at it in terms of your food inflation. People are earning are given only about 270. And as the unemployed people's movement and the care of the excluded in this country, we have put forward solutions that we think are appropriate. We have put forward solutions that I think can work, can bring back the dignity. And one of those solutions was that the unemployed in this country must be given a basic income grant of 1,500 rand. And the question is, where does that money come from? And we are saying, and we have been saying, that money, you can tax the rich. If you tax the rich, then you'll be able to generate that money and give the unemployed the 1,500 rand. So those are some of the solutions that we have put forward. The other solutions that we have put forward is that the government must do away with the tendering system. Because if the government is able to do away with the tendering system, there's so much work in this country. People need housing. Then we are able to build houses for people. In all these municipalities, the infrastructure has been eroded. So we are able to build the roads, etc. So we have put forward some of the things that we think are solutions. But what the government does put forward are false solutions, and those false solutions are underpinned by what I term austerity. Let me make one example, simple example. If you are unemployed in this country, we have seen this government cutting the health budget by 6%. It means if you are unemployed, you go to hospital, there will be no doctors. Because despite that you've got a public health system collapse in this country, people have turned these hospitals, death hospitals, they are dying in beds of this hospital.
Yeah.
It means if you are unemployed, you don't have the medical aid, we are in trouble.
Right. All right, Matthew, let's look at those issues Ayanda is raising. Remove the tender system is one, tax the rich more. You are suggesting we should also abandon this energy policy direction that says unbundle Eskom. You're saying that will create even more work. Are these things that can be done immediately and that could turn the situation around? And how can we monitor if these things are being followed through on, or are they being just simply ignored?
Yeah, look, I think first our number one crisis if we want to grow the economy is to deal with the electricity crisis. So we welcome the President declaring a state of disaster on the electricity front. We welcome that in the budget speech the government has agreed to take over 2/3 of Eskom debt burden, because that's going to help free up Eskom's scarce resources to invest in high-impact maintenance, which can help ease load shedding, also to invest in new generation capacity. Those are critical. But we need to also make sure that it doesn't come at the cost of Eskom's capacity. We should not be selling off its assets. We should be saying, how can we give all the possible support to Eskom? Because if we can have reliable and affordable electricity, the economy can grow. Similarly with our passengers and our freight railway network, that's critical for our mining, our manufacturing, agricultural jobs. So transit has to be secured, protected from cable theft. Similarly with our metro rail, we have to rebuild it. But again, protected from cable theft, because that's key to getting workers in our cities to the companies, to the workplace on time, so they can be productive. Government has to do much harder and more firmly with the issues of corruption. Government's got significant amounts of resources, but often at time we see billions of rands being lost to corruption, to wasteful expenditure. We will also see many municipalities in severe financial crises, not being able to provide basic services like roads, water, sanitation, electricity, etc. So government's got to do those hard issues. There are no shortcuts, unfortunately, to addressing issues. I think the issues that Ayanda raised, we agree with them. That we should not be cutting resources to the public services that the economy that the poor depend upon. That's going to cut your nose to spite your face. We've all seen with the South African Revenue Service, if you invest in the public services, you allow them to employ the people, the staff they need, to bring on board their capacity, their technology, the machinery they need, they can do a very good job. The reason why government was able to table this budget was because the workers at SARS managed to exceed the revenue collection target by 93 billion rand. That enables government to extend the SOD grant for another year, to extend the presidential employment program, to help Eskom reduce the debt burden, etc. So if we can invest more in the state machinery, be it from taxes to hospitals, to policing, to National Prosecuting Authority, to water, etc., we can grow the economy. The economy is not going to grow if we simply say, well, let's reduce expenditure and just hope for miracles. The economy will grow if we invest in it, if we stimulate it, if we address the blockages. That's how we're going to fix this country, and that's how we're going to reduce unemployment. We're not saying you must spend money recklessly, or that we must print money like some countries will do, or that we must allow debt to get out of control. It's about finding the right balance, but we shouldn't be taking one extreme position at the expense of people who are unemployed or people who are desperate. So we were quite disappointed, Thabo, that the presidential employment program, which we thought has done well, has helped 500,000 young people get work opportunities, get into the labor market, that has been reduced in this budget, cut by half. It makes no sense. We should have been increasing it fourfold to accommodate at least 2 million unemployed persons. We had welcomed the extension of the SOD grant because it provided a lifeline to people who are very, very poor, no source of income and work. But again, it doesn't make sense. It's not justifiable on a moral basis to not increase the SOD grant from the 350 it started off in 2020, and yet 3 years later it remains at 350. It should have been increased at least for inflation, if not to the food poverty line. We also think that it's about time that we begin to offer its recipients, the 8 million of them, skills development programs so they can get the skills they need to find work, and even to link them to employment programs so they can also be helped to find work. Because, as Ayanda says, you're not going to live off the 350. It's a help, but it's not the solution at the end of the day.
And let's bring you in here in agreement with Matthew around the question of the 350 not being enough and certainly being brought up to what you're saying is the basic income grant or at least the level of where the poverty line has been currently placed. But what do you make of the conversation around those who are in that particular SRD grant being given skills, at least, and being equipped with skills to be better placed to find employment?
Well, I do not subscribe to a notion that the issue of skills will be a panacea to the crisis of unemployed in this country, because we've got to understand it as structurally as it is driven by a system of profit. I've made an example about an austerity budget. That's number one. I think Cosatu did make a call after the new dispensation in this country. I think it was in 1996, if not 1998, after the Archbishop Desmond Tutu wrapped his web of the DRC. The Archbishop made a call that the unemployed in this country ought to be given a basic grant. Cosatu did join under the call for a basic income grant. And I think it's quite important for Cosatu not to be certain about this call. Because people who have lost jobs during the COVID-19 are also members of Cosatu who were paying the subscription to Cosatu. And also you've got more people that are unemployed, more than people that are employed. So I think it is important for Cosatu and to make this call of the basic income grant. Because looking at the crisis in this country, the basic income grant, it's not that it's something that we just call, but it is something that is a need. It is something that more than 13 million people in this country need. I also agree with Matthew to say 350, it's an insult. No person can live, even the children of politicians cannot live on the 350 rand per month. As I've said, in terms of real value, it's not even a 350, it's 270 rand. How do you live out of 270 rand for the duration of 30 days? It's impossible. It's an insult. That's number one. Number two, I want to make an emphasis of the point that I've made. The problems of Eskom started with when Eskom was corporatized by the current government. So then we have seen the crisis of Eskom. As a result, we've got many municipalities owing Eskom. I know our municipality owe Eskom, I think, more than 50 million rand. There was a time when Eskom last year, December, was threatening. I think it was in the Kukijim. I can't remember which municipality that Eskom was threatening to say, we are going to close. We are going to take our electricity. We are going to shut down electricity. So I'm saying it is the problem that everything ought to be profit-driven. It's not only on Eskom. We have seen how they've collapsed all the SOEs, so that those SOEs, when they are resuscitated, come back. You've got to pay them.
Yeah.
Again, that's a question of corruption. Look, in Cape Town, at Langa, I used to travel to school using train from Yanga to Langa. But if you look at Heidelberg, at Netwerk, at Langa, they've erected shacks now. Who have collapsed? Prasa, it is the politician. So you've got a problem of a system that is parasitic. You've got a problem of a system in this country. A system that is profit-driven. A system that I'm referring to as an austerity.
Yeah.
A system that is very parasitic. Yeah. So unless it is the system that is failing the poor, it is the system that is failing unemployed. So you've got to prioritize and say, we need an economic system that is going to prioritize individuals, that is going to privatize society.
What would an Eskom that is not prioritizing at least being financially healthy look like? Because part of the reason why we are where we are is, of course, the corruption that went on in the building of Medupi and Kusile, and that cost escalating to where we are, 400 or 600 billion rands in debt, and the government saying we're going to take half of that. And if this institution is not going to get into financial health, we are clearly not going to be able to navigate out of this. So, Ayanda, if you're saying they shouldn't prioritize at least making not maybe huge profits, but at least being in the black.
I'm making an argument that says the people who pay the price, who bear the brunt, are the unemployed, are the poor, are the black working class in this country. Eskom, the reason we don't have lights, it's simply because of the thieving of the politicians. Now, the very same politicians, they want us to pay more. The point that you are making, that Eskom must be financial help. So we've got to dig in the money that we do not have. So we've got to pay more as the black working class in this country. And I'm saying, Thabo, that's not fair. Because you get screwed by the politician. They don't only screw you. On top of that, they are saying you must pay. You must get screwed and pay for being screwed by the politicians. I'm saying that argument does not hold. It is not fair. It's not just on the unemployed in this country. We are not saying Eskom must not, but the government must fully fund Eskom and make it a point that Eskom is working. I mean, we have seen it's not only Eskom, it's all SOEs, it's all SOEs that have been collapsed in this country by the very same politicians. Now, to expect us to say the government has collapsed because of thieving, now you've got, I mean, they've screwed us enough because we are living in the dark. For us to have light, we've got to pay again. I'm saying that doesn't hold. That argument doesn't hold. It's not just.
All right.
I mean, the politicians must just be arrested for thieving. But as I was saying, the system is failing.
Yeah, point made. Point made. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say screwed on television, but I think you said it. Don't say it again at this particular point.
Excuse me for my very strong ruling. Excuse me.
All right.
But I just wanted you to understand how we feel.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand. The point being made. Matthew, can Cosatu be a little bit more vocal about the issue of basic income grant?
I don't think we need to be more vocal. We've been vocal on it for many, many years, as Ayanda's saying. We've always believed that we need to look after the interests of workers to earn a living wage, but also equally that we're in the same group with unemployed. We need to make sure people who are not able to find work for whatever reason do have some sort of source of income. Ideally, we would want to have a basic income grant for the entire country so that even people who are working and yet earn a poverty wage, they can have some sort of supplement to make sure they can survive. Because you find many people earn a pittance, a slave wage. They work many hours. In fact, you can find many workers in our cities, for example, going from Khayelitsha to town, spend a quarter, if not even more, of their wages just to get to work. We're finding a situation where some workers earn so little money they're actually not able to afford to go to work now because the cost of living, the cost of transport has risen so much. I think for us also, we are cognizant that government has to address many issues at once. So we need to have the presidential employment program and other employment programs to help young people get into the labor market, because you can't have an unemployment rate for young people of about 50-60%. We need to help Eskom get back on its feet because that's the lifeline for the entire economy. We need to help Transnet, to help Metrorail, many of the other SOEs, municipalities, etc. We need to invest in public service. So we have to address many, many issues. Of course, you'll always ask where to get the money from. Well, we think by dealing with tax evasion. But I think for us on the special relief dispensation grant, the SOD grant, we really welcomed it in 2020 because we still feel it is the precursor, a foundation, a building block for a basic income grant. The SOD grant has got many limitations. There's not enough money. There's administrative issues. The people are struggling to access it. All of those stories. It's fine. But it lays the foundation for a BIG. Yeah. That's why we've said repeatedly, and we've engaged with government, and we're happy government responded positively when we've engaged. Extend it. Let's retain it. Let's adjust it for inflation. Let's raise it to the food poverty line. Let's see how can we get it to a basic income grant level.
Right.
But equally, we can't afford to have a situation where we have 50 million people working and 27 million people depend upon the state for grants. We need to reverse those ratios just simply to afford society a sustainable path. And as Ayanda says, people want dignity, and there's no dignity in poverty. People want to earn a living wage. They want to take care of their families, and the social grants will never be enough to do that, but they must play a helping hand in the meantime.
Completely out of time. Let's leave it there. Appreciate you both. Thank you very much for coming on and helping us in that conversation. That was Cosatu Parliamentary Coordinator Matthew Parks and the Unemployed People's Movement Leader Ayanda Kota.